The best analogy that I find is looking at your personal brand as on a whole, a little bit like a long-term savings account. And when you've got that consistency in a long-term savings account, the rewards pay off, and your personal brand is similar to that in the consistency space, in the showing up space. A little bit each day or a little bit consistently each week will result in a compound effect and create more opportunities for you.
Martians landed?
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits?
Yes.
Drinking Henry's seltzer?
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit?
Yes, and?
Your branding here?
Yes, brand.
Your message here?
Yes, and?
A verse about?
Yes.
Your product here?
Yes.
I'm Hersh Rephun.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast. Yes.
My guest today is Kelly Lundberg. Kelly is a best-selling author. She's a multi-award winning entrepreneur. She is a former celebrity stylist, which is why we're going to glam it up. We're going to glam it up this morning. And she's just a very inspirational person. I've been following her for a while now, and I'm glad she's on the show. Kelly, welcome to Brand Voice Runway.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always find it when people do an introduction. I'm like, it can feel a bit embarrassing because it's like, is this me? Is this really what we created? But thank you very much. It's great to be here. I'm excited to share all things branding and questions that you have for me.
Well, let's start with this personal brand quiz that I took. I scored a 42%. I think it's designed somewhat to help see how prepared I am to really put my personal brand out in the world. I really felt it was spot on, but you tell me what it's all about.
So the idea is it's quick. It's supposed to be 60 seconds. So what we wanted to do was create something that allowed people just that, because everyone's busy, nowadays, to try and get people to stop and read something or do something. But when you're actually having to ask questions, your brain can answer that quickly. So the idea was to create something that was under a minute, 10 easy questions that would give you perspective on, am I posting consistently on social media? Do people know who I am or what my niche is? Kind of quite simple questions, but in the space of going, okay, how is my personal brand perceived by others? Have I written a book? There was a couple things that I know not everyone's done, but it was kind of that aspirational piece as well to some of the sort of the more basics. Are you on social media? And have you posted, consistently in the past week? That sort of thing.
Yeah. What it felt like for me as I was doing it was there were things on there. Anything that you asked that I wasn't doing was something I already knew that I should be. And I was like, it felt like my daily affirmation. So I could either visualize a little bit into the future. I felt like I really was on track in a certain way, but I also felt there's so much to be done, which I guess is how a lot of us feel every day anyway.
Your personal brand is constantly evolving. So that's why it's always going to feel a little bit like an unfinished to-do list. But the best analogy that I find is looking at your personal brand as on a whole, a little bit like a long-term savings account. And when you've got that consistency in a long-term savings account, the rewards pay off, and your personal brand is similar to that in the consistency space, in the showing up space. A little bit each day or a little bit consistently each week will result in a compound effect and create more opportunities for you.
Yeah. One of the reasons I'm thrilled to have you on is because my whole network of podcasts is called Yes Brand Podcasts. And so branding is really what it's all about. And yet it's not like this show is about experts on the topic. It's really about the brands themselves. And everybody that I have on, it really talks about their brand. I like to start with how they built it and then how they're going about taking it to the next figure, which can be financial or purpose driven or whatever it is. A figure is just a number. It's about impact. But tell me how you started
Yeah, so I would probably take back kind of, and when I say go back, it's not necessarily once upon a time, but kind of 20 years ago was really a kind of defining moment for me. In fact, probably just over, because I decided to leave my home country. So I'm originally from Scotland and Edinburgh, and I made the decision to move to the Middle East, a city
Right,
called
Dubai.
Dubai. Yeah,
Yes.
and then like lots of people have heard about Dubai now, but 20 years ago, people didn't know where it was. And I originally took the role, it was in my very early 20s. I was desperate to escape Scottish weather. And for me, it was just an opportunity to come and live and experience and travel and just see the world before I really decided what I wanted to do with it, with my life. And that in itself presented an incredible opportunity. One, living in a country open to, just there were so many things that you could do. But that role that I took on was originally cabin crew. And, I think even from those days, public image, how you present yourself, your brand, you were an ambassador for, the top airline in the world. There were standards that you had to adhere to. And I think even from those days, as I progressed from cabin crew into owning a celebrity styling agency, which I had for 15 years, that really honed in on public image, how you present yourself, how do you come across, whether that's for a job interview, whether that's for, climbing the career ladder or starting your own business, photography, pictures that you need to enhance your brand, to royalty who are standing on a stage, addressing a nation. So that kind of really took me deep into the world of personal branding and style and presentation. And then after 15 years, I was like, personal branding, there's so much more to it. And I'd been building my own brand alongside my business. And I'll come back to the defining moment for that for me, because that brings it all together. But that's when I really decided, wow, there's so much more to personal branding than public image in your presentation and what you wear. And when I look back on how I'd built my own personal brand, I was like, there's a pattern here. And I could really see it quite clearly. And that's when I decided that it was time to launch Brand You Creators, which was really going into a much deeper personal brand strategy for entrepreneurs, for CEOs, for C-suite executives and athletes. That's where I see sort of big gaps in people going, do you know what? I need to develop my personal brand and I need to start developing it and make it more visible. And to go back to that sort of defining moment, there's been a couple of moments. One was I knew I always wanted to start a business and sell it. And with that, you have a business, but you also have your personal brand that stays with you. So that was kind of one defining moment, knowing, because I've sold two businesses, but my brand has always stayed me. So that was one moment. But the other was actually while I was working as I was a stylist, I was invited to speak with a luxury fashion brand. And when the PR department contacted me, they asked me to send me over my pictures and my bio and my logo. And I did all of that. And the PR company the PR team from the luxury fashion brand said, I'm afraid we can't use this. And I was like, was thinking automatically, is it not luxury enough? Like, what's wrong with it? And quite simply, the girl said to me, if we're going to work with you and we're going to promote you in store, we can only promote you, not your business. And I was like, okay. And the more and more I realized, I was like, it's not just brands that want to work with people. They don't want to be promoting someone else's business. They'll promote a person. They'll advertise a person, but they won't promote another business. But it wasn't just that. I was starting to notice in media and publications and magazines and newspapers, it was never my business that got interviewed. It was Kelly that got interviewed. And that's when I was like, okay, so there's so much value in your personal brand as well as your business. So I talk about personal brand equity in your brand as well as your business. And they should both be growing together, because you never know what's going to happen with the business, but you'll always be your personal brand and you can always evolve on from that.
Yeah. I love that, because I always tell people, all branding is personal. There's no such thing as the brand without your imprint on it. If you're the founder, if you're the creator of the brand, and yet you're infinite, what you can do with your own personal brand is limitless. Yeah. But I think within that, there is a lot that you can probably tell us about how to separate yourself from the entity. It's very interesting that when you said, I wanted to create a brand because I wanted to sell a brand. I wanted to know which is amazing. And I just talked to somebody named Matt Glacky. I don't know if you know him. And his specialization is in selling your company, but not from the point of view of, I just want to get rid of my company right away. It's something that you start thinking about from the moment that you create the company. And that can dice itself up any number of ways. But it's fascinating that it's the second conversation that I've had in a week where, somebody has talked about selling that entity, but not necessarily divorcing yourself from it, or, you never can. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, interestingly, I wanted to sell my business before I even started it. I didn't even know the name of my business. And I was like, do you know what? I really want to start something from scratch and sell it. Now, that was a 15-year period from starting and actually selling it. But it was, and a lot of people have said to me, but you sold something that was so personal. Right. And I'm like, yes, I did, because it was personal styling. But what I also sold was collateral. I sold a database. I sold a brand that had, if someone was starting out, they're like, here you go, you're walking into a business. It's all there for you, So the piece about building the personal brand and the business brand, I often find that there's a couple of ways entrepreneurs work in particular. They either hide behind their business because they go, I don't want my business to be about me. I want it to be about my clients. I want to separate myself from it. And I think, sure, there can be an element of divorcing yourself from your business. But I think nowadays people want to know the story behind, it's storytelling, it's connection that is drawn to why people want to do business with you or why people want to buy your product or service. Because here's the thing, nowadays, what you do is there's other people doing it. So what makes you different is your USP, the DNA in your personal brand, your backstory, your purpose, why, all of that. So I think it's naive when brands themselves say, no, I want to be completely different, because you say you are your brand. It's come from your idea. I think there's a huge part. It is you.
Yeah. And there's two sides to it. There's the, consumer or client side, and it is all about them. It is all about what it does for them and how it helps them. But obviously the backstory, the brand story is integral to that. I don't think there's a way. I don't think anything can happen for either party. It's a partnership. We're partnering with our clients or with our consumers, and I don't think you can do one without the other, Now, what were you going to say? I
was just going to say, I always find it quite challenging when people try to think it is that way, and it's not. There needs to be that personal piece. I always find it quite hard when I find it hard to relate or to connect if I'm looking at a brand or a business and it's impersonal on the website and it's, we do this, we do that. We were established here in, 2007. Who's we? Who's the we? Because I'd rather go with someone who's going, do you know what? I started this 3 years ago and I started it because of X. And this is why I'm really passionate. I'm going with that person.
Yeah, because there's a unique DNA. I mean, let's talk about that. Typically I divide these interviews up into, there's a getting to know you part, and then there's a how do your audiences get to know. And in this case, it's kind of all surfing, alongside. One idea is surfing alongside the other because we're talking about personal branding. But, you could have gone on and continued to be a stylist and continue to license that out, so to speak, or, just kind of sit back. So what prompted you to want to create something new where you were going to be helping people with their personal branding?
I think primarily I wanted more leverage in my business. So styling is very specific to the person. One, I did launch an academy to support fashion stylists who were going into business. And I really enjoyed supporting the next generation of fashion stylists. But it's quite interesting because it's actually an industry where from the outset, a lot of people think, ooh, this is glamorous, or, ooh, I'd like to be able to do this. But a lot of people run it as a hobby. and it can absolutely be a profitable business, which was always what I was trying to get across. But a lot of the people going into it or starting into it, it gave up a little bit too early.
Yeah.
Whereas what I found when I was working with, and this sort of, it kind of came nicely timed with, I built a personal brand. So people were contacting me off social media, like, how did you do this? How did you get a TEDx talk? How are you doing this? And I've invested 20 years into personal development, business growth, skills that I've learned, that all of these things, like I can public speak, I can help people with that. Like there's so many things on a bird's eye perspective that I can support clients with. And then when they need to hone in on that, once they've got their strategy and they're like, okay, this is done, this is done, this is done. And they're like, I still need help in this. I'm like, go to the expert then in this particular aspect of personal branding. And my skill set is being able to go, okay, here's all the aspects and the facets that you need to think about. So this got me excited because there was leverage from the perspective of I could do one-to-one, but anywhere in the world, because I could mentor over the internet. And 2, I could launch group programs. And that really excited me. And I got a type of clientele that was hungry to want to excel in their business, or they knew that if they would do this, it would get incredible results. And I have done for so many clients. And that just fills me even more with confidence that I know that when you invest in your personal brand, that, you inspire, you impact, you influence, but it does increase your income as well.
Yeah, of course. And that's a great thing. That's something that some people, myself included, have struggled with, where we feel like if we're being hired to do something, maybe there's something, a little bit like wrong with that. We should either choose altruism or business. And the fact is, what I've learned is that when I'm helping people, that makes me feel great about my business, but my business has to feel great too. And so I kind of, I feel a kinship with you in a couple of ways. One is that we both come at branding and personal branding in particular from a different point of view. With me, it's language. With me, helping people find what I call their brand voice. That's why I called it Brand Voice Runway. Because I feel that personal spark is always in there. Some people just grasp at the language that's not their thing. The words are not their thing. And so I kind of nurture them that way. The other thing is you're being a self-appointed member of the 5 a.m. club. Because that's my makeup as well. But talk a little bit about that, if you would.
I've always been a morning person. My mum's always said this to me. Ever since I was little, I would get up, I would just amuse myself in the mornings, and I've just always been a morning person, which then does have a knock-on effect. I don't know if you find this, like it's very rare that I'm awake after 10 o'clock unless I'm out with people doing things. But if I'm in the house, it's game over by about 9:30. But I think the big thing for me was wanting to find some consistency. So a few days a week, if I had a personal training session, I could maybe get up for 5:30, 6 o'clock. But when you really start to make it a way of life and you complement the morning routine with the evening routine, because I think that's the big thing. It's all good and well getting up a few times a week at 5 a.m. or 5:30. When you're going to bed at 10, 11 o'clock at night or 11 at night, you can do it. But I think it needs to become a way of life. And over the past 18 months, it's maybe even longer, past 2 years, I'd say, it has become a complete routine to the point now where even on a Saturday, I'm like, it's 5:30 in the morning. I'm like, okay, just lie here, listen to your book. And then by 6, I'm like, I'll get up,
Right.
But I love the things that I can do in the morning. So for me, working out has become a huge part of my morning routine because it puts me in the best possible position to be able to serve my clients and give them the best and show up on social media with energy and just be that person that I want to be. And getting up at that time in the morning just really lights my fire, I guess you could say. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but
it isn't. But the fact is, I just the reason I brought it up is because I relate to it so much. There's a bigger reason, and I'll tell you in a second. But because I relate to the idea of that, I relate to the weekend thing. I don't put the alarm on the weekend, but I'm going to wake up early anyway, earlier than the rest of the family. And I love that. I love that I'm getting up and I'm getting stuff done and I'm getting things going and I'm exercising and doing all of that before maybe in many cases anybody else is even doing it, you know. But the bigger picture was that I also think that we, you know, it isn't so much that, you know, that we just want to help the people we work with. It's that we see ourselves in them, and likewise. I think that it's an identification thing. Doesn't mean that they get up, that they're early birds, or they get up in the morning. It's that they see what we go through, and likewise to achieve whatever it is that we want to achieve. Do you feel that with your clients, that you're identifying that way?
Yeah, and I would say even for some of them, quite a few of them, they aspire to that.
Yes.
And I always think a role of a mentor is to be in a position where you can inspire other people or they can learn from you. And, you know, even on social media, my goal is to inspire a minimum of 5 people a day. It's been my goal for, I don't know, the last 10 years, and I love it. And I don't know if I always do it, but I think that through a large social media following, if I do speaking events and groups, some days I get more in than others. But for me, it's that inspiring people to action, to show up as the best version of themselves. That's what I love doing. Whether that's someone seeing me in the gym and they're like, oh, can't be bothered going, but Kelly's gone again. Do you know what? I'm going to go. Or if it's, you know, posting that, you know, hey, in bed by 8:30. It's like, you know what? It's okay to go to bed at 8:30 during the week because you get up early. So I would say it's very much an inspire piece. And then for other people, it's like, okay, that doesn't resonate with them, but it's okay. And I think also in that, you don't need to appeal to everyone. I think that's been a big piece in sort of the brand journey, in going, even though you share, you know, these stories, or, you know, we're alike in this, it doesn't appeal to everyone. And I'm like, I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that in that, a lot of people can find themselves. You know, it's like you can find yourself by looking at someone else, even someone you admire, and saying, okay, I see how they're doing it. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to do it. They're doing it their way. And even though my way is completely different, that's kind of inspiring. I'm going to do that as well. One of the areas that I want to go into now is more because we talk about this all the time on the show as well, the nuts and bolts, in a way, of maybe the less sexy or glamorous part of business is maintaining contact with your audience. And there are different ways to do that. And obviously social is one of them. What other ways do you stay in touch with the audience that you're cultivating?
Yeah, I would say there's a number of different ways. So we're pretty good on newsletters and kind of connecting with people with value adds. And I think that's something that, especially when I speak to clients and they're starting out, that they really don't invest time in, and their focus is always social media, social media, social media. And when you're like, but when half your audience doesn't see your content, what are other ways for you to share the same message? So I find regular connections through email a great way to be able to share personal, and the amount of emails I get back from people going, oh, thanks, it was nice to get that update. You know, it's not always work. There's personal things in it, because again, it's personal brand that we're driving. One thing that I have found particularly enjoyable from a personal perspective, but also really encouraging from a community perspective, is I do in-person events. So since COVID, and the first opportunity I got to go into hosting events for 10, 12 people, I started doing that. And Dubai was quite early, actually. We had a really strict lockdown to start with. And then within 3 months, we were able to do group events. And that, I have loved the energy of being able to speak to people one-to-one and share my message on a one-to-many, but be able to see them rather than kind of just always doing it online. So that's proved to be, like, every month I get, you know, a good group of people that join, and then I also do one online. So I do both for an international audience, but the one-to-many in person works really well for me. And networking, I guess, for me, just going out to events, being visible. I think that's the big piece, is just being visible on social media. And that comes back down to consistency as well. You know, people automatically assume that you're doing amazing if they see you all the time. And I've always find that sort of quite interesting when, say, I meet someone in person and they're like, oh my God, I've been seeing all your posts. Like, you're doing amazing. And I'm thinking, thank you. My scheduler is doing amazing because I batched that content. But it's just all part of that consistency.
Yeah. But what the live in person, in real life thing does is tie that all together, I find.
Yeah.
One feeds the other. A long time ago, I used to be in advertising, but a long time ago, I abandoned that part of it that wasn't real. The photos, the staged campaign or photo shoot or whatever. I really loved the idea of, even when we were doing behind the scenes stuff, going out and shooting behind the scenes at an event. Well, let's use that. Let's turn that into the campaign, or let's make that, I just always pushed for that connection with the audience. And fortunately, that's where things went in terms of, even with influencers. I was like, let's go behind the scenes with the influencer. I don't want them to really just make their own content. I want to bring them in and let's have them interact with the leadership of the company or whatever it might be. And then let's show that to the audience, because the audience always wants to. As a kid, I loved The Wizard of Oz. I loved that scene where they peer behind the curtain. Don't look at that man behind the curtain. Well, that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the inner workings of the magic. And I think that's what makes magic work for us, is when we can see a little bit of how is it done, because that makes it all the more real, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little, before we have to kind of circle around and tie it all together, tell me a little about your book, that you're working on a new book, right?
I am, yeah. So this is my third book. My first book I released was about entrepreneurship in Dubai, and it was written, when I think about it now, over 15 years ago. And it was I was very excited about entrepreneurship in the Middle East because it was such a new environment. So that was a self-published book. It was sponsored by a big bank here. And so that was the first one. The second one, I did an ebook, which was online, all about fashion, styling, and running a business. This one is all about personal branding. And the working title at the moment, because it's with the publishing consultant, so it's just about to be pitched out to agents and publishing houses. It's called De-Seed the Lemon: How to Elevate Your Personal Brand One Pip at a Time. So the concept behind that is actually a metaphor. De-Seed the Lemon has come from many hot water and lemon teas that I've had over the years, but actually originally it came from my Scottish granny, who always would say to me when she was making a hot water with lemon to remove all the pips, because no one likes the pips that float around in your drink. Like, so significant. It's so insignificant, so tiny, but it has a compound effect on how you enjoy your drink. And I always thought about that. And I started to apply that metaphor in the fashion industry, in my business. Just the little things make the big difference. And when I looked at it on the personal brand on a whole, I was like, wow, you could de-seed the lemon. The little things make the big difference in service, how you show up, the consistency. It's often not the big things. It's the wee things done every day or every week or just often. So that's what it's about. Broken it down into 7 key pillars that I talk about in Brand You, which is the formula that I work through with my clients. And I'm excited to see how it's perceived. I go through moments where I'm like, and you're publishing a book as well, and I am sure this is similar, but I go through moments where I'm like, oh, that's really good. And then I go through moments and I'm like, who's going to read this? It's quite an interesting journey.
Well, it's like that comment about the magic. It's like, I want to bring my readers behind the curtain, when it comes to selling the truth. That's what mine is, selling the truth. Because I just think that people are longing for camaraderie in the journey, in the journey that we're on. And I think that's why it resonated with you. I just right away felt that you were opening your audience up to your world and how to live beyond wherever you were and start something new. The Dubai thing was a fascinating element. Do you make it back to Scotland?
I do. It's going to be a lot less now. I used to visit sort of once, twice a year. And then 4 years ago, on one of those trips, I actually met my now fiance. So we had
Right.
been doing long distance for 4 years. So I was visiting a lot more than I had been over the sort of the last 20 years. But he recently just moved to Dubai officially. So
Yeah, I know. Congratulations. I
thank
saw
you.
that on
And
social media
social.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think my parents, as much as I've left home since I was 18, I think they're a little bit sad that they're not going to see as much because I would be back like for a month in the summer and I would be back kind of every quarter so that we would catch up, but it's going to be a little less now. So
Yeah. Well, let's give you the last word. And if you want to leave our audience with, first of all, how to find you. So before you go share some of that, it'll all
yeah.
be in the show notes, of course, as well. But share maybe a resolution of some kind that you have personally for the next 12 months, something that you're determined to accomplish in the next 12 months.
Oh, that's a really good question because actually I just finished a podcast because my birthday is coming up in the next couple of weeks. So every year I do a podcast and it's the review of the last 12 months. And the last 12 months have been the most profitable, have been the most exciting, and have been probably the ones that I've been the happiest in, which is really exciting. So when it comes to planning the next 12 months, I'd wanted to complete this book for ages. So that's happening. If I can get it in the hands of a publisher, then that would be a big goal. And for me, it's actually just reaching more people. So it's that leverage piece that I would say would be a big goal over the next 12 months. And it's one of the major reasons why I decided to start a new Instagram page, which I know that you've been following as well. I walked away a month or so ago from my blue tick, not bought, my blue tick that was worked for, I think I've had it for about 5 or 6 years, but my account was 12 years old, and made the decision that I wanted to reach new people. I felt my account was old and wasn't resonating and wasn't connecting with people in the same way because there was bots on it, there was dead accounts, just I'd had it a long time. And I think that going forward is not being afraid of change, not being attached to vanity of numbers, but being attached to engagement of a quality nature. I definitely see that as something kind of driving through in the next 12 months. And I'm excited to see where that goes. A lot of people have contacted me saying, wow, I so want to do this, or I want to start a new social media page, but I'm really scared, or you're really brave. And I'm like, well, I've not deleted it. It's not gone anywhere. If it doesn't work, I can always go back to it. But 3 weeks in, the results are insane. Like, it's so interesting just engaging from a new perspective after something that's 12 years old. So yeah, that's something else that we'll be working on. So that ties me nicely into what is the new Instagram handle is Kelly Lundberg .official. Obviously, I have the original Kelly Lundberg official. LinkedIn, loving that platform. I spend a lot of time on it. I enjoy the types of conversations and the different people that I get to connect on it as well. So come and say hi there at Kelly Lundberg. And yeah, take the quiz. I'll share that with you so your listeners can try and see where they fare in our 60-second personal brand quiz.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and?
it worked for you,
Yes, then?
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.